Okay, so I want to welcome George Weiner, who works at Whole Whale. He's the founder and chief whaler at Whole Whale. So it's a pleasure to welcome him here today. We're going to look into a practical guide to AI and how to enhance donor engagement and avoid pitfalls. With that, just a little bit about Whole Whale. They work with nonprofits and organizations to advance their mission using today's tech tools, such as Google Ad grants and Whole Whale has actually worked with, over 100 nonprofits and spent over $6 million in Google Ad grant dollars. And George is at the helm, and he is incredibly active in the nonprofit world. And he's the host of Whole Whale's in-house podcast. He's also a contributing author of the Nonprofit Management 101, and also an author of The Simple Guide to Creating and Navigating Tech RFPs. Co-founder of the Power Poetry, which is a teen poetry platform, the largest teen poetry platform in the US. So I found this all just very incredibly interesting. And if you're looking to get on his good side, you can throw him a good whale pun over the course of this session, and that'll definitely give you some brownie points. So welcome, George, and I'm just going to give it to you to take it away.
Wow, thanks for having me, and also for the participants that have still hung in there for the Zoomathon. But I mean, I was lucky enough to just overhear the last session, which was really solid. So it seems like a tough act to follow. I'm going to make sure that you can see my screen though right now. Yes?
Yep.
Great. And then Jenna, maybe I'll just rely on you if there are comments and questions that come up as we go. I know we've got 30 minutes or 25 minutes. Yes?
Yep, just about. And everyone, please remember that our last participation prize is going to be awarded after George's session. So definitely keep that in mind if you have any questions.
Well, great. All right. We'll get right into it because I've got far more slides than time will allot, which is always a good sign. Thank you for the great introduction. I'll just add that we've also developed something called causewriter.ai, which has free resources for nonprofits looking to understand and learn about how AI can be leveraged for good through generative means. And we also custom build solutions for our clients and select organizations based on their data in their way. Yes, with Power Poetry, we've also been playing with machine learning since going back to like 2018, where we were actually a Google Cloud ML case study for how we were giving poetic and poetry feedback based on rap and American artists for young poets. All right. So thanks, Cosvox, for putting this together. I'm going to go through adoption, prompt concepts, engineering, and use cases. Starting with adoption, I think it is important to acknowledge the fear. I don't know where you all are on that spectrum of using versus not using, the people that you are working with using versus not using. But I've created this very technical chart here. As you can see on the y-axis, the up and down, we've got low versus high AI prompt quality. And then on the x-axis, I've got low versus high fear of being replaced. So when I see something like write an email about the environment to get people to donate, I'm seeing somebody who maybe has a high fear of being replaced, and I have a low prompt quality. The prompt quality, the question I'm asking, the context, the audience, what I'm trying to achieve when I write something. The response to this type of prompt is going to be fairly generic. Help the trees, here's the reason. Like the GPT is going to give it its best effort, but it doesn't know you, doesn't know your organization, doesn't know your donor base. Very unpersonalized. Let's compare that with a prompt like this is an email fundraising expert appeal like Fundraise GPT using the Pain Agitate Relief model to craft a donor appeal email that connects Father's Day with our mission, insert our mission here, and how giving will help tomorrow's dads. The quality of what I'm going to get is superior. The first draft, not final, but the first draft that I'm going to get from a quality prompt like this is notable. It's more personalized. It's more focused. It is more probably also because it's a higher quality prompt written by somebody who doesn't have a high fear of being replaced. The person who writes, write me email fundraising email is itching sometimes to say, look, see, I can write better than GPT. This is junk. Hold on. Remember when we all started using, I don't know, that thing called Google, searching for information on the internet? I mean, now we are and have become far more discerning, but in the past, if you had simply just taken the 10 top links and said, this is the fact of the world, you'd be like, you obviously don't know how this works, do you? The way we use these powerful tools matters quite a bit. And that's where I get into the prompt engineering, but acknowledging the fear. The thing that I am seeing and the thing that you are all experiencing is that AI is a side of fries with regard to software. Any software platform where you put in text, it has either been rolled out, it is being tested, or it is being planned for to say, how do we serve it up like a side of fries at a fast food restaurant where we have in LinkedIn, in MailChimp, in donor platforms? How do I get like a little quick generative click here to get an AI generated answer? My concern there is that when you click that button, it doesn't have the context of what you are doing, who you are talking to the degree with which it should. And I'll explain more about that as I get into prompt concepts and prompt engineering. There are 40,000 plus tools out there. There's even a site that is a there's an AI for that.com where you can say, what am I trying to do? There's an AI for that. The truth also is that 95% of these things are not going to make it a year. They are startup funded. They are maybe just a wrapper on top of GPT. They're going to get rolled over like, like as though by a steamroller because they are simply a feature that is going to be pushed out by one of the big players in the field. So I think when you're looking to adopt AI, think use case first rather than tool first. I'm going to put this another way, though, because there's also another dynamic going on inside of our organizations with regard to the use of AI. And in this oddly generated DALL-E 3 image, I want you to imagine you're in a seventh grade class and there's a pop quiz. And this math class, actually, the math teacher, they forgot and they left all the answers on the board. The math teacher doesn't realize it. Now, these students, given the choice, are just frankly going to look up. All they have to do is look up to get the answers on the board for this math test. Whether or not you have a policy in your organization, anyone that has graduated college in the past 3 years is looking up, is using whatever local GPT that they have access to generate content. And there's pluses and minuses for that. But just because you don't have a policy or just because you think that your IT team has blocked this or that, make no mistake, when the answers have been put on the board and there's an incredibly easy way to generate text, it's being used by your team. And if you don't believe me, I want you to roll back the clock a decade when organizations thought that they could stop people from using social media at work because they blocked it on their computers and forgot they have that thing called the mobile phone to do this stuff. We're just, we're replaying history again and again. So I'm trying to speak to both sides, the fast adopters and the folks that are more cautious about it, because there's something for everybody out there. Coming back to tool first, I think it's important in this proportion to think about the adoption where we are looking at our people, then the process, then the product in this sort of rough ratio. And notice that it's not all product. And right now, what we are seeing is that these fries, the side of AI fries, are being thrown at everybody in a general sense. I want us to be more specific about how we are designing the tool for the purpose with the people in our organization, the departments, with their knowledge and their insight, because it's going to make for a better result. There are two phrases I want you to have as you wade in and we look at the personalization and implementation of AI into your organization comms. First, not final. These create first, not final drafts. And it can create a pretty amazing first draft, but you need an editor. You also need a human in the loop of any AI system that you are designing, especially if it is crisis or youth adjacent LLMs, large language models that you are rolling out. The human in the loop also means that you acknowledge inside of your organization, once you press send, once you press publish, once you put in public what you generated internally, you own it. The staff who published it own it, your brand owns it. And if it has, I don't know, let me say hallucinated, lied 1 out of 10 times, there's no, oh, but the AI did that. That wasn't me. You own what you put out there. And I think that sort of extreme ownership in what we generate and what we produce from AI matters quite a bit. as speaking to the leaders in this group. Prompt concepts. Let's get into some tactics, though. I've mentioned some of these words. I'll pull out some. I'm mentioning the word, prompt, and this is what I mean by it, just those text-based instructions that I'm giving it. Some training of how I'm giving it relevant information, hallucinations. This is that it has non-factual responses, even when I give it all the relevant information. Other big things are context window. This is its short-term memory, and this continues to grow and get larger, measured in tokens. And this is going to also relate to how much text you can shove in. The output is always smaller, so it can't necessarily output 200,000 tokens. That generally is limited to about 4,000 to 8,000 tokens, depending on the model. So there are many companies out there producing many different types of models. Getting back to what to be concerned about a little bit with these generic GPT outputs, is the gray jacket problem. I presented at an AI conference over a year ago, and I showed up on stage wearing a delightful gray jacket that I picked off the rack, and it looked unique to me. But when I stood on that stage, there was actually another person named George wearing a very similar gray jacket. What happened? Well, it was pretty obvious that I was not the unique little snowflake I thought I was. I had picked out something generic and off the rack. And in public, what's happening is we're beginning to be able to perceive and understand what has been generically generated. And in that moment in the store, it looked unique to me. I looked around, I was like, nobody else named George wearing this jacket. But in public, it is becoming very, very clear who's generating this GPT junk from generic prompts. And this is under the category of lazy prompting, under prompting, not giving it the context. This is the write a fundraising email. We have given essentially an empty diner. It doesn't know you. It doesn't know your context, doesn't have understanding of your audience, your brand voice, and what you and how you create. And so we shouldn't be surprised that we get a generic gray jacket. I'm going to put this example another way, though, for you. Maybe you can play along in the chat really quickly, get that participation score up. Which one of these, A, B, or C, which one of these is a real photo taken by a human? I don't know. Throw it in the chat. Kind of curious. I'm going to scan real quick. See how you all do on my. Okay. Some A's. A's taking a lead. Some C's making a run. A. What you're doing right now is nothing short of amazing. You're showing the incredible ability as your brain power is crunching tons of points of information to instantly assess this image as generated by a camera versus an AI versus stock photo. So you're right. Those of you who said A, you took the time to do it right. Funny. So A is a real picture that I really took. That actually happened. But it's amazing that you could distinguish what is real versus not, because objectively, this is a glass of beer on a bar. Take another shot at which of these is stock, which of these is a stock photo. Because we just went through this sort of pattern recognition training of the human eye on stock photos. You should probably do pretty well by this. B feels very stock. All right, Corinne, you nailed it. It feels very stock. The feels is so important because that's built on millions of points of data in pattern recognition of our brains being able to say, I know in my mind if I say happy business person, successful, yes, like you have that stock photo in your mind. Frankly, I can go in and like show you, like, here is businessman, generic, and you're like, yup, all of those are very stock photos. So much so that is literally a meme. And this is coming back to what we are going through as it relates to GPT detection as a populace. We are all being trained into what was GP generated versus not. And yes, there are tools that are slightly less accurate than I wish they were for detecting it, but the tool I care about is the human. And in general, humans being able to detect this. And what I can get concerned about is the junior level staff potentially saying, write fundraising email and then just pressing send because the job is done. Our audience is going to be able to tell. I think we're all going to need to step up on our prompt engineering and what this means. And this is Google search looking at past 12 months in the same way that we all understand at a fundamental level or at some level, far more than we used to, what it is to be a social media manager or social media strategist or the elements that are involved there. This is something that is going to be trained up at various levels for our team. Internally at Whole Whale, I expect our staff to be going up this rank. I think in your organization, you should maybe have a chart like this of saying, like, what is our base level? Where are we starting? Okay, great. Do we have basic acknowledgement of tools and use? What are we using for that? Do we have some simple prompt architecture that's just text-based? Can we do image-based prompt architecture? Great. Are we implementing in spreadsheets maybe? Are we building custom GPTs? Can we do trainings for internal, external audiences? Are we moving into vector embeddings and more advanced things? Are we getting into agent prompt architecture? Where are we now versus where we want to be? And not everyone needs to get to that high level, but you got to be somewhere. I think GPTs are the new templates. So you've got the fundraising email appeal template. You've got your brand template. You've got your grant template. Every time I hear the word template, I hear we should have a custom GPT that helps you fill in that template. So the challenge is when I look at the process, that tends to be where I start to look for it, turning those internal docs into on-brand GPTs for internal staff. Here's just an example of like our Whole Whale proposals and how we can do certain parts of it. We're not having it output the entire proposal here, but for certain things like a timeline, like it is great. I've trained it on how to output a 6-month timeline based on our services as a first, not final draft. Uh, if this is a question in the back of your mind, why we're always, like worried about hallucinations, Sam Altman, founder, literally has called it a feature than a bug. It is a probabilistic engine. And it's actually in part what allows us to do its magic. However, this is why we always have to check. We can mitigate, we can reduce, not remove. We can reduce, not remove these hallucinations through designing things with retrieval augmented generation, which is just assigning an extra little database or some files associated with the GPT, and also web accessible LLMs, large language models that can potentially cite sources. We can reduce it, we can't remove it, and there are ways of designing smarter systems than others. The way this works, and I always hesitate on whether or not and how far to go, like technically, but I think this matters. This is actually a screenshot from like 2 years ago. They got rid of this, and I always question why, but used to be on the development backend, you would actually get a look at how it was generating word by word. Probabilistically, every single subsequent word is based on the previous words that came before, and the next most likely piece based on the temperature and other selection criteria that it goes through. But it's a roll of the dice. So when it wrote the word articles, it actually only had a 9.75% chance of writing that word articles next. It actually wanted to do social next. But for whatever reason, because our temperature maybe was higher on this one, because the wind was blowing 2 degrees to the south, because a butterfly flapped its wings, it chose articles. And getting into hallucinations, this is part of the magic, because sometimes it can go off the rails as it may choose things that are less probable to come as the next word, sentence, porcupine. As the next porcupine. That's the next word in my list. Now I'm on to porcupines. You can see the longer the output, I tend to see the greater the danger of going off the rails and hallucinating, which is why I always try to make the output request more focused. And maybe that is helpful in your prompt architecture and prompt engineering. All right, there are different techniques. Zero shot, don't do this. This is I give it one request and I expect one back and I run away with that. Try not to do that. Try to go with some sort of conversation, a tennis match, going back and forth, asking for clarity, refinements, and specific ways. How can you make this more persuasive? How can you make this more interesting? Can you give me a better hook? Like push it a little bit more. This is an intern giving you a first draft. Push back a little bit. We can go progressive prompting where we break up larger tasks into its component parts. And we can also use things like chain of thought, where we say, hey, reason out what you're about to do and then go from that, explaining your reasoning as you go. All just different tactics. There are many like these. Here's our approach, and actually an exact tool to just write prompts for you in our style. And that's at CauseWriter Resources AI Sandwich Prompt Maker. So with our Sandwich Prompt Maker, we have found that If you start with a top, middle, and bottom structure here, the top, oh, thank you so much, John. Brilliant. Link in the chat. Like literally take that, and that was worth the entire webinar. Like you can leave. If the number of participants just drop, I'm be like, I see you. There's a little bit more, but this is the most valuable slide. Let's just not lie. All right, here's how it works. The top layer is defining a world-class role in whatever you're trying to write. We define it as that, and we brand it as like that thing as a GPT. So let's just say I want a presenter GPT that is amazing at synthesizing information into structured presentations. Brilliant. The middle, here are examples of great presenters. Here's what they do. Here's what they sound like. Here's their cadence. Here's their words. And then the bottom, we reinforce the fact that this is presenter GPT, a world-class presenter at breaking down complex topics into it. Please do your best. And this is the prompt that will like go about generating that for you, depending on what you want to create. It's important to note that we want that world-class, whatever assignment. We want that world-class because, put another way, like nobody runs into the hospital saying, hey, give me your most average doctor. Like I really want a middling human to come and operate on me. Not what we want. These LLMs, these large language models, have been trained on the corpus of the internet. I don't know if you have been to the internet that I have been to, but it ain't all awesome. So we need to pull out what the best components are, what we want it sampling from. And the more we can do that, the more we're getting into how we prompt engineer and give it relevant information for what we want our outputs to be. There's another powerful thing that I think organizations are going to need to start doing a lot more of, which is employing a librarian. What do I mean? Well, when we look at retrieval augmented generation, which is just saying, hey, here's some files I want this little AI to run around with, the amazing thing that AI can now and is able to do is move from the idea of a card catalog, which is like a SQL database or a spreadsheet or a classic table-based structure for our data, where I go in and I find my author by title. Fine. I go alphabetical order and I run it down. The librarian, however, would be able to say, hey, can I find a book where the protagonist loses their mother in a way that shapes their character development? And it will pull out books that have that narrative element. The power of that can't be underemphasized because it gives you this ability to have a large corpus of information, a source of truth associated with your chat interface, your prompt. This is what is going to get you the best possible outcome. This is a model of it, but essentially query comes in, it pulls some knowledge, it appends it to the prompt and query, then runs it to the large language model, then gives you your response. So what does this look like in action for one of some of our clients? When we custom build for data brand and use cases, we've combined the King James Bible in a retrieval augmented generation chat. So you can actually find thematic elements inside the Bible for quotes and components that can then augment how you're speaking to your audience. We connected to the current 4 best large language models in the market. And I am always very delighted that there are no single winner take alls in this. We do not want a winner take all by any stretch. So we are talking and using APIs that connect to OpenAI, to Anthropic, to Perplexity, and to Meta Facebook, just to name some, and experimenting with others. And then the other thing is like, I really don't want our data sold into an LLM. I just don't want it. We have tons of stuff you can play with that are built onto a lower tier GPT. So these will do a pretty decent job, but not the best possible job because frankly, we're paying for all of those token requests. So we do put these things out there for free so that you can get a better sense of what's possible. But all of those would perform definitely better. So here's some examples for crypto donor framing. Let's talk about personalization. I really love, I think, crypto philanthropy right now for organizations. 55% of the top 100 nonprofits actually accept crypto, which is, I don't know if it comes as a surprise or not, but like it makes a lot of sense. However, the way we talk to those donors is uniquely different than fiat traditional donor elements. And we bake that into a GPT to reframe how you are speaking to them. I encourage you to play with it. Again, I'll note that's built on a lower tier GPT. We love building them at a higher tier. Donor persona builder. This is epic. Like this is so much fun because you actually can create different donor personas that represent the psychodemographic of your organization and then chat with them. What do you think of these subject lines? What do you think of this content? How might we better appeal to this person? Donor customization categorization. Basically GPT and Sheets. We've got a free template that will do this, and I have a link somewhere in here for that. Actually, no, that's in our resources. That's in the slash resources. There's a GPT for Sheets, but essentially I can export. So let's say I have CauseVox and I export my donor file. I can actually go through and create an AI that will summarize a description or give me a persona for this person based on a loose bit of information that then may inform a personalized email that I could then send people on that list. Now, clearly, some of the stuff is just like it is making up, but also you can have fun with it. You can actually have it create far more customized components based on information that you pass in and then generate on a per person basis. And then you could export that to thing of your choice. So this is it writing an email. So instead of a categorization, I say like, hey, thank you for this. It's pulling in New York, passionate about animals, kindness. We could also, if there was information associated with a national organization and different regions they were working on, they could automatically append regional information of your programmatic components. There are a bunch of chats to play with. I mentioned some of them, the OpenAI, Anthropic, the Wild West of Hugging Face chat. So you can play with Llama 2, Llama 3 now. You can play with offline models. Clearly, Bing and Google, you are probably already running around with because they're associated with everything you have access to at this point. Perplexity AI is probably the best GPT-informed search tool, so it's like a great research assistant. And then we have a whole bunch of tools constantly just listed at wholewhale.com/AI. Oh wow, you are quick, Jenna. You were on top of these links. Here's just fun stuff. I don't know if this will work or not. If I'm sharing my audio, I'm embarrassed to say I don't know if I'm sharing my audio. I'm probably not. I'm gonna go with no.
Not from the presentation.
Hold on. I'm gonna test speaker. Switch to phone audio. That's okay. With Udio, I'll say with Udio, you can actually generate songs with a single prompt. So I created a tree hugger song, like a thank people that donated to an environmental organization, and you could actually put someone's name in it. So if you just want to surprise and delight, like that could be a funny thing. Um, you can repurpose your assets with tools like Opus Pro. You have a long video. This will chop it up into those like happy, high, and tight YouTube shorts and to the 9:16 vertical ratios. Mentioned Opus Pro, so you can take like a YouTube, pull this out, and create videos. You can create custom video messages, and like some of this is new, some of it is old. Like Bonjoro.com, like had this ability where you could put in the name and it'll overwrite it, and they've gotten more robust, I think, over time with these AI tools. And then d-id.com can create custom messages that are spoken by an AI. And in terms of personalization, it's only going to get more accessible across more tools, and I encourage you to play with them. Hey Jen, this is me speaking French, and I don't speak French. No parlez-vous français, but you can actually translate dynamically your lips synced with a different language using Hey Jen if you have that need across donors potentially. And then for very advanced pieces, when you want to start to play with agents and prompt architecture, it's possible to use AI as a step along the way. So I can send a message in Slack, I can upload files, and then I can have them processed with a GPT and then send a message back to Slack potentially. You can use an email processor. So this is like create an Asana task for this email thread. I forward it in, and then I actually have it processed by AI and then added to Asana for me. Or I could have it maybe pushed into my CRM. Or if I have a donor come through and I want certain information appended or categorized, I can have that done by AI with an agent inside and through the flow of Zapier. AI inside of Zapier is a tremendous unlock. Don't train on me. I'm concerned about how LLMs are hoovering in your data, my data, our data to generate outcomes because I think we are unintentionally potentially polluting the waters of our GPT generated brand when we are putting various things in there. And I don't think we fully understand what that means. So be careful where you are sending your information. I think, and I would encourage you all to have some sort of AI disclosure at some point that has an understanding of how you disclose it, how you keep human in the loop, and avoid training on data. I'm a little concerned right now about search generated experience, this chat first search, we'll call it. Put in a simple term, should my nonprofit use AI tools? Whole Whale shows up as a number one resource. And with Gemini, we get zero. We're not even mentioned. Sometimes, yes, they'll have it as a footnote, but I think this is going to really hurt information based searches of our organizations and our topics. Alrighty, I'll pause there because we are basically at time and I put a lot and threw a lot at you. There are a bunch of links for you, but I'll pause if there's any final questions here.
Yes, any final questions for George? Yeah, I mean, that's just the amount of information is just really important to know, especially for nonprofits and fundraisers, because I think that these tools can be just so helpful to streamline, the admin process for a bunch of our folks here. What would be like the number one tip you would recommend to somebody just starting in using AI if they're not familiar with the tools, really?
Well, I'd make sure that if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. Be careful. So whatever tool you choose, make sure you're paying for it, be it OpenAI or Anthropic, and going that route because you also want to be using the best possible tool to generate content. And so from there, making sure that you're approaching it with that like not fear mindset, but opportunity of how to generate things. And yeah, I think you'll be impressed if you take it as a first step when you're doing certain tasks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm very impressed by the number of tools that you've provided our attendees today. So hopefully they'll take advantage of them. Um, okay, Mohammed asked one last question. How to reach potential donors through AI? Have you had any experience with that, George?
I mentioned how to customize messages. And so, for potential donor appeals at a like one-to-one level, it can help you do that. If you're, framing it with a, hey, here's my cold email writer using the pain agitate relief model, or what is interesting about, let's say I could put in a LinkedIn URL and this LinkedIn profile URL brand builder. If you go and play with it, you're like, oh, wow. If I just put in someone's LinkedIn profile, it gives me like a quick demo on them and then what and how I might appeal to them, given that my organization has these elements and this person has this. Give me that approach. So it can really help you with customize, but it's just the tip of the iceberg, I guess.
Amazing. Sounds great. Yes. Thank you so much, George, for being with us today. Incredibly helpful to break things down for us in the AI world, since it's sort of new for most of us, me too. So yeah, thank you again. It was incredible. Everyone give some love to George in the chat. And yeah, we'll look forward to hearing more from Whole Whale hopefully next time too.